when I was teaching at Denison at Stanford, I was a speaker at the inauguration of the new president of the university. It was a very high academic event, and everyone was in caps and gowns, and there was an orchestra playing music for the event. There's a special piece that had been written for the orchestra, and my part was to read the words of Jane Stanford, who founded the university, about the vision for the university. So I was sitting there in cap and gown, and the president of the university and all these distinguished folks and the orchestra behind. And my part in this was to follow an orchestral selection. So the orchestra plays this beautiful thing, and they come to a conclusion. So I stand up and I walk over to the dais, to the microphone, and say, "And now the words of Jane Stanford." And at that point, the orchestra begins the second movement of the piece. So I had clearly screwed up my the timing. There was something, so I realized at that moment, big mistake when I, so improv saved me in that I realized that all I needed to do was what comes next. So I took a breath and I went back and I sat down, and the music continued, and they finished it, finished the thing, finally, the very end of the piece. So then I got up and I walked to the podium, and I looked around and I could see everyone knew that I was in that position, and I said, and now the words of Jane Stanford. And there was a kind of lovely laughter that rippled through the audience, because they all realized that I had screwed up, but that I'm just moving on.
Welcome to the Ideas on Stage podcast, your regular insight into leadership communication.
Hi, Patricia. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's really nice to be here.
Thank you very much. Now, you've written a fantastic book, Improv Wisdom, and the subtitle of your book is Don't Prepare, Just Show Up. Now, you need to clarify something for me, because as a presentation coach, I always tell my clients that if they want to make an impact when presenting, they need to prepare. Preparation is key. You say, don't prepare, just show up. What am I missing?
Okay, I lied. I really don't mean that. What I mean is actually what you teach. Prepare, make lists, write your whole speech out, do it all, because I don't know how not to prepare. The way the mind works, if you've got something you're going to do, you're going to start working on it somehow. But what I really meant by that is, don't let that preparation, all of that thinking and working and organizing, and don't let that get in the way of when you do show up, being there 100%, so that you're not presenting your package, but you are there embodying all that you've worked on, all of that preparation, and being there 100%.
That makes a lot of sense. Thanks for clarifying. Now, there are many people who struggle with presenting, public speaking. Now, do you think that improv techniques and principles can help people become better speakers? And if so, how?
I really do, because you're right that a fundamental human fear is fear of public speaking. It's one of the 5 fears of death: loss of reputation, loss of income, loss of consciousness, speaking in front of people. Improvisation, the study of improvisation, helps you understand that you're perfect just as you are, and that if you come to trust your own abilities, and this doesn't mean to be confident. It's interesting, because my belief is that confidence follows success. At the end of the program, if we've done okay, that was pretty good. There's a sense of okayness. But I have to say, after almost 50 years of teaching improv, I still get nervous before any presentation. Today, I was sitting here trying to calm myself and breathing before we started the Zoom. So the study of improvisation gives you practice in thinking on your feet and gives you tips and ideas about how to manage those circumstances. Right now, we're improvising. Even though we have an idea or some sort of goal in mind of what we want to do today, conversation, human speech, is improvisation. So the first thing we start with in a class is to understand that you've been improvising all your life whenever you speak. In fact, it's when you read a presentation that you're doing something else. There may be a time when that's really the appropriate thing to do. But the study of improv will give you some ideas and techniques and a little bit of encouragement about what this feels like.
Now, this is so interesting because you said, for example, that before starting this conversation, you were feeling a little bit nervous. And at my end, it was exactly the same. Before going live, I was doing a bit of deep breathing. I'm a presentation coach, and I always feel nervous before presenting. That's normal. Now, connected to that, there's a line in your book that resonates with me. You say that performance anxiety, and this is not just for public speaking, but it's very much connected to it. Performance anxiety comes from excessive self-focus. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Oh, yeah. Well, it seems natural that it's about me. I want you to like me. I want to be considered talented. I want to succeed. If that focus on how am I doing, how do I look, what are they thinking of me, all of those thoughts, which are very natural, get in the way actually of just returning your focus outward onto the audience, onto the other people, onto the world that you're talking to. In fact, if you took my improv class, the very first thing we assembled and we're all in the room and maybe standing in a circle, and I say to you, the most important thing you need to know to improvise, it's not about you. Of course it's about me. I'm here to learn how to be a better me. No, it's not about you, because you need to look around at everyone else in the room and start to notice who else is here. So your focus can't be on how am I doing? It's got to be on Andrea's face right now, or the that are out listening and watching. So when you learn to care about others, or shift your attention from self to other, to your ideas, to the world, to what's going on right now, you start to become a better improviser. But self-focus is natural. We're all thinking about ourselves. But if we learn to shift that attention outward onto the world, onto who else is here, what's in the room, what do we need to do now to make this a better moment? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. This is so true. I think that especially when we think about public speaking, there's a difference between wanting to grab the audience's attention and being the center of attention. These are two different things. Of course, you want to grab the audience's attention, but you don't have to be the center of attention. Once you have their attention, then you can and you should redirect it to your content, your idea, your message, and how useful it is for your audience, how relevant it is to your audience. My business mentor, Daniel Priestley, he often says, thinking about what you've just mentioned, Patricia, it's not look at me, look at me, look at me. It's look at that. And that is your idea, your content, your message. For example, in our company at Ideas on Stage, we always say that when you give a presentation, it's that presentation, not yours. It's always the audience's presentation. Again, it's about them. It's not about you. Now, in your book, there are 13 maxims, and I'd like to explore some of these maxims together. The first one is say yes. Tell me a little bit more. Now, in a presentation, for example, how can we say yes to whatever happens?
Well, it means first paying attention to what's going on. You can't really say yes until you know what the circumstance is. For example, if you're a presenter and you come into the room and you're setting up and getting ready and check the microphone, and you notice that that the room is really hot, and everybody's kind of sitting there. You can tell they're uncomfortable because you are too. If you pay attention to what's going on, that's saying yes. You might need to say, is anybody else in here a little warm today? Yes. Oh, looks like maybe someone in the back there. Could you turn the thermostat down? I think we'll all be a little more comfortable. If you address the reality that you're in, the idea of saying yes is also of opening. It comes up often in questions. When you start to answer questions, you need to notice what the question is, accept it, hold on to it, examine it, appreciate it, and then respond to it. So there's a sense that saying yes is the fundamental improv rule that we often, when we hear someone saying something, our mind is thinking about what we think about that idea, whether we agree or we, so we're not really listening anymore. We're judging. So the idea of saying yes is to always accept, notice what it is and accept what it is. Later, I have taken the 13 maxims and condensed them into 4 A's. The first is attention. And that's in order to say yes, we have to see what's really there and accept it. Acceptance doesn't mean liking something, because a lot of the ideas that come our way are problematic, but we have to open to them, take them in, and then appreciate. Later, that's one of the maxims of wake up to the gifts, noticing how in all circumstances we are being supported by others. Right now, you're listening to me. There's an audience that's giving us their attention. We have technology, this amazing world of Zoom and the internet that allows us to speak across cultures and across time zones. So saying yes is adopting an affirmative way of being in the world and of being with whatever is going on.
And what I see is that some of these maxims, or many of them, are connected to each other. For example, you've just mentioned addressing the reality. And there's another maxim, which is face the facts. And facing the facts is really about accepting reality rather than fighting it. Is that correct?
Exactly, yes. And face the facts is really about that sometimes what is coming at you is something you don't like or you have a problem with. So it's easy to judge something first before really examining it. And the improviser has to accept whatever it is in order to proceed. So there's the yes and. So I'm going to build on what has been offered in some constructive way. I'm going to find the good and work with that. There's always something in someone's idea that you can work with. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And there's another maxim, which is make mistakes. And I think that in our journey towards becoming the best communicators we can be, of course, we will make mistakes. Of course, we'll need to make some adjustments. That's part of the process. Although what I see is that, and sometimes myself included, we see mistakes from a negative perspective. What are your thoughts around making mistakes?
Well, if you're not making mistakes, you're probably not doing anything very, very important. The word mistake is often a problem for me. Someone says a mistake is really an event followed by an evaluation. cats don't make mistakes. All right. So if it sometimes it feels like what I just did was a mistake. I think you are more admired if a mistake happens in a presentation or in something that you're working on, if you notice it and accept it and work with it. That it's really necessary, I think, to be a full human. If making mistakes means you're actually trying something, that you're willing to, that whatever your purpose is more important than some kind of polished, perfect presentation. I really believe that I have often admired a speaker or politician when they have pointed out something that they've changed their opinion on, or they've grown to understand in a different way. That to me shows character. So making mistakes, certainly we don't try to make a mistake, but a mistake seems to be an evaluation that happens after something has gone a certain way. And I had a sign in the classroom, if you're not making mistakes, you're not really doing this work. So when we improvise, we show up, we notice what's going on, we accept it, we appreciate it. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then we act on it. That's when our ideas come into play, and we share, we do what needs doing.
You've just mentioned appreciate it. Feel free to expand on that concept.
Well, there's one of the maxims is wake up to the gifts. It's about appreciation. And to me, that's my very favorite of all the maxims. The book that I've been working on, book number 2, is all about It's All a Gift, is the title, Radical Gratitude. If we really notice something besides ourselves, we are all here thanks to the efforts of countless other real individuals that we don't really notice because we're paying attention to ourselves. That's that excessive self-focus. I spent some time in a monastery in Japan doing a practice called Nikon. Nikon, the Japanese characters mean looking inside or self-reflection. And what I was reflecting on was all that I've received from other people and what I've given back to them. And also another interesting question, I was reflecting on the trouble and bother I cause other people. I bring this up because the sitting for a week silently, going through my life, looking at what I've received from others is very instructive. And I certainly discovered that at any moment in time, I am receiving so much right now. Right now, I'm receiving your attention. I'm receiving, I've got a great chair that I'm sitting in right now. This morning, my husband brought me a cup of coffee. You're listening and smiling and giving me your attention. The internet is making this work. We could go on and on about if we look around, everything in our visual field is something that has been created by others. There's a wonderful quote by Steve Jobs about the world that I'm in. I didn't create a great long list of all the things that he didn't create, but that he received the benefit of. So appreciation is really at the heart, I believe, of all communications and of living really a good life.
Before we continue with this episode, I just want to share a few resources that I think will be super useful for you. The first one is check out either my book, Confident Presenter, or my colleague Phil Wakenow's book, Business Presentation Revolution, or both. These are books for business owners and leaders who want to take their presentation skills to a higher level. To make the most of the books, take the Confident Presenter Scorecard, which is an online tool that allows you to assess your presentation skills for free in less than 3 minutes. And then also, at the moment, I'm running a series of free presentation skills web classes, and I'd love to see you there. The links are in the show notes. Now, let's go back to the episode. You made me think about what we said earlier, that performance anxiety comes from too much self-focus. And I guess when we don't notice what's going on around us, and of course, then if we don't notice it, we can't appreciate it. That's also because we are paying too much attention to ourselves. And also, earlier you mentioned a word, polished. And it's so true. There are so many presenters, including me sometimes. When we give a presentation, we speak in public, we want to try and be polished and perfect. But there's another maxim in your book, which is counterintuitive, but I love it. And the maxim is be average. And that really is an invitation to embrace imperfection. A common friend, Matt Abrahams, and by the way, the reason why we're having this conversation is because I interviewed Matt on a podcast, and he told me that your book was one of the best books he had ever read. And so I had to reach out. And he also talks about this idea of embracing imperfection in his work, in his book. Now, many presenters want to try and be perfect and be polished. You say that in reality, you need to be average. Tell me more.
I think be average is one of the most important pieces of advice to a speaker or to anyone doing anything, because we all have a kind of natural intelligence of how to do something or how to be. We're full of ideas, and when we're called upon to do something, have a job interview or to make a presentation, it's natural to want to really do our best to make it the most perfect. And I'm really I'm aiming for perfection. But just as I'm trying to demonstrate this, you notice the tension in my body. And when we're trying to do our best, it creates a physical condition, really, of stress and anxiety that if we just aim to do what we know how to do in an ordinary way, being average, being just being ourselves, the chances are that we'll do much better than if we're aiming for some kind of high goal. I have a group of friends that for years met on Friday nights at someone's house, and it was called Bad Art Night. And so we would all bring our projects and our watercolors and knitting or whatever, because we knew we could do bad art, right? So it was kind of a joke to get us there. And as you can imagine, if you've got a bunch of artists doing work, some really great stuff's going to come out of it. There's a book that gives some scientific study that the people that do more art do the best art, rather than those who try to do the best art and strive at one. So there's something about it, maybe seems like a little brain tease. If we really allow ourselves to aim for average, we can succeed at that. And our chances then really of doing well enough are good. Takes the pressure off.
And not only does it allow you to do work which is good enough, but often it allows you to do the work that you need to do, that you want to do in the first place. Now, for example, because otherwise you don't, if you want to strive for perfection. I'll give you an example. Many years ago, I attended a business accelerator to try and grow the business. And my business mentor, Daniel, he suggested that we create a brochure to show the features and benefits of a product, of a service. And I spent months trying to make it polished, make it perfect. For me, it was never perfect. And then one day I was very happy about it. The brochure was almost done. And so I sent him a message. I said, the brochure is 99% done. And I thought that was a great achievement. And he responded with just one brief line, and I will always remember that changed my approach completely to everything I do. His response was 99% done is not done. And if we think about it, you don't have a massive difference. There's no massive difference between 99% done and 1% done. It's not done. So it's the same thing. And that's what happens when we strive for perfection. Not only does that not allow us it doesn't allow us to do good work, but often it also doesn't allow us to do the work in the first place because we want to make it perfect, and until it's perfect, we don't do it, and we never do it.
Right. Yeah. You stop. Short. That's a good example of how if it's not perfect, then I don't know. I think if we all aim for average, we get a lot more done.
Yep. And also, now so far we talked about some of the 13 maxims from your book, and you also said that to simplify things, you've summarized these 13 maxims in 4 A's. Can you give us, just as a recap to simplify things for our listeners, can you give us a high-level summary of these 4 A's?
Great. The 4 A's are, I'll say them, then I'll talk about the connection. Attention, acceptance, appreciation, and action. So we open ourselves, we have to pay attention to what's around us, to what comes our way, to what the offers are, to what's on our plate, what's on our calendar. Attention in detail to life. And then once it's come to us, once we've noticed it, we have to accept it. That is, say yes to it and open ourselves to it. But it's more than just opening. We need to appreciate whatever the offer is, whatever the circumstance, and to notice what we're receiving from others that makes that possible. And that we need to do that before we judge it or reject it. So once I've seen what life is offering me, I've accepted it, and I've appreciated all of it, then I'm in a position to act. That's when my role in life comes in. Now, what do I need to do? What needs to be done based on this? So I might look around. I might notice that there's a pile of dishes in the kitchen. I appreciate the fact that I've got dishes and I had a nice breakfast. And now what needs to be done is to wash them and put them away. And so this notion of really noticing, really accepting, and then appreciating how something is can be applied to anything. And then we're in a position to act on life. But we often really haven't done one of those steps. We haven't appreciated something or haven't really accepted before we start to act.
Yeah.
So
And if you think about those 13 maxims or the 4 A's, if there's one in particular, which one do you think is the most challenging one for people to apply in their daily lives?
which one is the most challenging one?
Yeah.
Did you say? Yeah. It may be the appreciation aspect. We jump to action. We go for. It's a really good question, and I'm struggling now because my first thought was act now, which is one of the maxims. Go for it. And now I'm saying, no, I don't really mean that. I mean, you really have to notice and appreciate before you act. And all of that sounds kind of complicated when you're in the moment of an improvisation, a conversation. You need to pay attention to the question that you just asked me so that you can move forward. A lot of people wait to do something before they have confidence. I think your book is The Confident Presenter, right? And the notion, confidence in my thinking is a kind of a feeling of I'm okay, I've got this now. I've prepared so well that I am ready for anything. But we've just discovered that both you and I, minutes before we started our conversation, didn't have that feeling at all. We were a little nervous or maybe very, very uncomfortable or something. So what we do when the Zoom screen opens is then really notice each other and really pay attention and really see what's here and happening right in the moment. And the questions will come to us, the answers will come, or we might not have a perfect answer. We just scratch our head and say, I don't know, which is a very good answer, frankly, if you don't.
And by the way, I don't know, saying I don't know, for example, during a presentation, you receive a question, saying I don't know is a sign of confidence. And you mentioned my book, Confident Presenter. Now, just to clarify, for me, when I use the word confidence, for me, confidence doesn't come from natural talent or self-belief or wishful thinking. Confidence comes from preparation, it comes from familiarity. Now, if someone would like to try and apply some of these improv techniques and principles to improve their communication skills, what do you think? What would be a first step for them to be able to get started in this improv world?
Well, the book, the 13 Maxims, each is a very short chapter, and each chapter has some exercises that you can do that are practical. And if, for example, in the first maxim of say yes, one of the exercises is say, support someone else's dream, agree with all their ideas, give them the spotlight. So if I were practicing saying yes, I might decide, okay, for today, I'm going to pay attention to what my husband says and wants to do and find the positive in all of those and agree and build on his ideas. So I could take that maxim and explore what that's like. And sometimes that's not easy because maybe my first response to what my husband is saying or doing is something I don't agree with. So how can I open to what that idea is and work with it rather than, oh no, we won't do that. So each of the maxims has something we can try. I suggested an exercise when you're out in the world shopping or interacting with service people. This can also work when you're calling customer service. Say something that allows you to honor the work they're doing and thank them for it. You might look at the badge on the supermarket clerk's thing. Oh, Marge, thank you for bagging my groceries here. You must be standing up for a long time. Looks like you're really doing a good job. You do this so well. So if you make as an exercise for yourself to notice what other people are doing, comment on it favorably. Everyone loves to have someone notice what they're doing and approve of it. And people who are workers doing ordinary things hardly ever get gratitude in that way. So that's an assignment I give myself. Whenever I go out, I try to notice what someone is doing and thank them for it. Whenever I speak to a customer service representative on the phone, I ask them, where are you sitting today? Oh, I'm in Cairo, or I'm in the Philippines, or I'm in Kansas. And I say, wow, what's the weather like there? So I think being an improviser is ultimately being a good human, noticing each other and thanking one another for all that we're doing. I want to thank
Being
you.
being a good human, which is so much more important than just than becoming a good presenter, a better presenter. I love your approach, Patricia. I'd love to go back to what we were talking about before, making mistakes. And there's a story that you share in your book where you were a speaker at, if I remember well, it was the inauguration of the new president of Stanford University, and something went wrong. Would you mind sharing that story?
Well, actually, there's an example of that in the book. When I was teaching at Denison at Stanford, I was a speaker at the inauguration of the new president of the university. It was a very high academic event, and everyone was in caps and gowns, and there was an orchestra playing music for the event. There's a special piece that had been written for the orchestra, and my part was to read read the words of Jane Stanford, who founded the university, about the vision for the university. So I was sitting there in cap and gown, and the president of the university, and all these distinguished folks, and the orchestra behind. And my part in this was to follow an orchestral selection. So the orchestra plays this beautiful thing, and they come to a conclusion. So I stand up and I walk over to the dais, to the microphone, and say, "And now the words of Jane Stanford." And at that point, the orchestra begins the second movement of the piece. So I had clearly screwed up my the timing. There was something. So I realized at that moment, big mistake when I. So improv saved me in that I realized that all I needed to do was what comes next. So I took a breath and I went back and I sat down, and the music continued, and they finished it, finished the thing, finally, the very end of the piece. So then I got up and I walked to the podium, and I looked around and I could see everyone knew that I was in that position, and I said, and now the words of Jane Stanford. And there was a kind of lovely laughter that rippled through the audience, because they all realized that I had screwed up, but that I'm just moving on. What I said to myself when I sat back down is just focus on the words of James Stanford, not on your disgrace. And it was actually a lovely moment. I think people warmed to me. That was a human moment when my timing wasn't very good.
That tells us that sometimes making a mistake can also be a good thing in terms of the human connection that we can have with the audience. And if you think about what we've discussed today, beyond your own book, Improv Wisdom, that again I recommend and we're going to include in the show notes, do you have any other book recommendations? Books on either improv or anything connected to what we talked about today?
Hmm. Well, there's a little book that has been around for a long time called Constructive Living by David K. Reynolds. He's a sociologist and a psychologist, that I have found real part of my book, I think, is based on his ideas of knowing your purpose, accepting reality, and then doing what needs to be done. It's a simple little book with some great ideas. Then there's the classic book by Keith Johnstone called IMPRO, IMPRO. That's a classic textbook on improvisation.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm going to include both of them in the show notes. Now, if someone wants to connect with you and say hi after this conversation, what should they do? Where do they find you?
I'd love that. Yes, please. I would love to receive emails or contact. My easy way to remember how my email address is the book title, improvwisdom@gmail.com. So you can put that in the notes too. I'm happy to receive emails or conversations with listeners. Makes me really happy. The book is now in 10 languages. The most recent is I had a Tibetan academic who is doing an AI program for Tibetan language, and they wanted to translate Improv Wisdom into Tibetan. So
Congratulations, 10 languages. That's amazing. Now let's close with this. Again, if you think about what we've discussed, is there a question that you think I should have asked and I didn't? Have I missed something important?
I don't think so. I think your reading of the book and the ideas, you're one of the best hosts I've ever spoken with, because you seem to understand the scope of the ideas in the book and what might be valuable. And I really appreciate that. So
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That means a lot. And thank you for being a great guest and also for writing your book. I saw, by the way, a talk that you gave years ago where you encourage people in the audience to write a book. I know how important books are for you. So thank you for writing your book, for the work that you do, that you've done, and for sharing your ideas in Improv Wisdom. And let's keep in touch. All the very best.
Yeah. Have a great day.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Ideas on Stage podcast, there are many more you might like, so please subscribe, leave us a review, and tell us what you think. You can find many more ideas on business communication at ideasonstage.com or by searching for Ideas on Stage on iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and goodbye for now.